All right, let's jump right in. We're about to unpack a really powerful idea, something pretty urgent actually. And it's this. What if the key to a safer Nigeria isn't on the battlefield? What if it's in the bank?
Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds extreme, right? But the argument we're looking at today says the cash, physical, untraceable money, is basically the lifeblood for some of the country's most dangerous groups. So how does that work? Let's get into it.
Okay, so first up, let's really wrap our heads around the scale of this problem, because we're about to see how simple, everyday cash is actually fueling this massive shadow economy, one that makes all sorts of illegal stuff possible.
And look at this list. What's really striking is just how wide this net is cast. This isn't just about one thing. It's this whole interconnected web of crises. You've got terrorism financing, kidnapping, child trafficking, even down to government corruption and roadside extortion. And the one thing they all have in common? Untraceable cash. It's the thread that ties it all together.
And listen, this is not just some theory. It gets very real very fast. This slide points to a major real-world allegation from the State Security Service, the SSS. They alleged that the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the CBN, was involved in funding illegal groups, including one called IPOB. So yeah, this shows that worries about illicit cash go all the way to the very top.
So you have to ask, right? How is all of this even possible? How can these huge criminal networks operate so openly? Well, it all comes down to one simple, fundamental feature of physical cash.
And here it is, anonymity. It's that simple. When money can just change hands with zero record of who gave what to whom, well, it becomes the perfect tool for anyone trying to operate in the shadows.
This chart right here, it really cuts to the heart of the whole thing. On one side, you've got the old way, cash. It's anonymous, you can't trace it, it goes undetected. It basically enables all this illicit activity. But then you look at the other side, digital transactions. They're identifiable, they're trackable, they're transparent, and what does that create? Accountability.
So if there's one thing you remember from all this, let it be this simple mantra. Cash is anonymous. Digital leaves a trail. And believe me, that trail is the last thing these criminal groups want.
All right, so if the big problem is anonymity, then it stands to reason the solution has to be transparency, right? And that brings us to what our source material calls the digital footprint solution.
So what does that mean? Well, the core idea is pushing towards what's called a cashless society. Now, that doesn't mean cash disappears overnight, but it means an economy where most transactions happen digitally. Think about it. Every time money moves electronically, it leaves a digital footprint, a little piece of data. And we're already seeing the beginnings of this with things like Nigeria's eNaira initiative.
Okay, now this is where the argument gets really, really interesting, because the idea here isn't just that this financial strategy is an alternative to military action. The argument is that it's actually smarter.
And this comparison just lays it all out so clearly. On one hand, you have military force, what they call kinetic efforts. And look, those are reactive. They deal with the symptoms, often after the damage is done. And sadly, they come with a huge risk of collateral damage. But a cashless policy? That's proactive. It's a preventative measure. It goes straight to the root cause, the money, and just turns off the tap. No bloodshed, no bullets.
So, what would this path to transparency actually look like on the ground? How do you even do it? Well, the source material lays out a pretty clear, four-step game plan.
First, you've got to actively implement policies that encourage people to use digital payments instead of cash. Second, you have to strengthen, and I mean really enforce, the anti-money laundering laws that are already there. Third, it's about increasing transparency, making sure the right authorities can actually access the data they need to investigate. And finally, number 4, you got to get the public on board. Educate people on why this shift is so important for their own security.
At the end of the day, the really crucial point is this. This isn't just some boring debate about financial policy. No, at its very core, this is a strategy for national security. The whole idea is that if you can disrupt the flow of that illicit money, you can literally start to dismantle these criminal operations and create a safer country for everyone.
And all of that leaves us with one last big question to think about. The benefits seem pretty clear, but it definitely requires a trade-off. It forces us all to ask, is giving up the anonymity that comes with cash a price worth paying for the promise of a more secure nation? It's definitely something to chew on.